Bradford.
Right. I would like everybody to please just turn off your cell phones so we don't have any interruptions today. And also, are we started on the, we online? All right, good deal. First order of business tonight is a public hearing. We have those from time to time when we have first and second readings on various ordinances for the town. There are 3 on our agenda today. What I'd like to do is take the first 2 ordinances under public hearing, and those are item number 1, ordinance 2021-05, an ordinance amending the town's Unified Development Code to restrict the second-story heated living space of residential development to 80% or less of the first-story heated living space. And the second ordinance, both of these have to do with the ARB, is ordinance 2021-06, an ordinance to establish an architectural review board for the town of Pawleys Island. So what we'll do is have a public hearing, and if anyone has signed up to speak on those 2 items related to the ARB, we've also received some comments and some emails to be read, and I believe Preston is going to do that. Got sign up.
So there's the ones here that signed up, and then Preston has the ones that were emailed in that will read.
Okay, very good. Well, let's do the folks that have signed up. We'll have you guys come up first, and we've got 3 that signed up so far, and first up is Scott Towns.
Short and sweet. As a longtime visitor of Pawleys Island, now an owner here at Pawleys Island since '98, I only want to say I'm not for or against the ARC rule, the ARB rules, but I think it is a good thing that we really ought to consider, only because of the property value and what I've seen since 1960, year 1960 coming down here till now. We have something unique in Pawleys Island. We've always said it over and over and over and over again. And I'm not here to say the pitch is right, the colors are right, the sizes are right. I'm here to say that it's good that someone's overlooking this or looking over this and wanting to put something in place, because I own the beachfront condo here at Pawleys Pier Village, and I always tell people by contrast, that beachfront Pier Village condo, 3-bedroom, 3-bath, is not worth it's worth much more here than it is at Litchfield, Garden City, and Surfside. And the houses too, I know, are the same way. So I think getting some little bit of structure and what can and can't be done, I think, is a positive thing for this community to keep what we have as unique instead of becoming Surfside, Garden City, so on and so forth.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Appreciate it. And just a reminder for the next 2 that have signed up, we have a 3-minute limit. Just we'd like to be fair to everyone else and keep it pithy. So next up, we have Bill Otis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it all right if I just sit
Absolutely.
For many years, starting in the early 2000s, the Planning Commission, Mayor, and Council struggled with avoiding an architectural review board. We used a few specific construction requirements along with design suggestions to achieve the objectives of Pawleys Island type construction. I wrote the 2004 document titled Appearance Standards, which is in the document that's up for the Architectural Review Board in 2004. The appearance standards suggestions were made under a big assumption that buyers on Pawleys Island would want their houses to fit in and reinforce the culture that caused them to want to own on Pawleys Island in the first place. We were wrong. Way too often that has not been the case. What has happened since 2004 shows that more time and money has been spent to create the maximum horizontal and vertical living space with little or no regard to appearance and its impact on Pawleys and its neighbors. Much of this subversion has been done to maximize rental income. Examples include using the 712 required foot roof pitch on only a portion of the roof and creating unnecessary roof design elements covered by roofing materials simply to meet the required 7 to 12 pitch. Those roof designs are then used to create high second floor ceilings, resulting in a big box look as opposed to the story and a half Pawleys Island. Another example is double deck porches. They use them to enlarge the perception of living space, which increases the visual mass of the house, which results in an even bigger big box look. I have resisted architectural review boards over the years in favor of a few design ordinances and suggestions. I really thought that owners wouldn't do what so many have done. I now believe that an architectural review board and at least these ordinance additions are needed, and as soon as possible.
About 30 seconds, Bill, about 30 seconds.
It is not too late. The horse is not out of the barn. There are still many more opportunities for problems, from the subdivision of large lots to the tear down of older or smaller existing houses. We must protect what we love. Finally, to paraphrase a locally famous slogan, please don't box the island.
Thank you, Bill. All right. Thanks for those comments. Third and final person that signed up is Sandy Crosland.
I'll stand up.
Sure.
I'm actually just wanting a clarification, if you don't mind. My understanding is you started out with a good series of requirements, including the kinds of shutters, the design of the porch, the 80% reduction in the second story floor plan. And then you moved most of those to recommendations, but you kept the 80% on the second floor. But when I listened to your speech, this is what I want as a clarification. It said that you were hoping for a good faith effort on both sides, and that anyone who brought their design into the architectural review board would be required to make a good faith effort to follow the design recommendations. Well, that makes those design recommendations sound like requirements. And it's even more complicated than that. If they're requirements, then you start out with your architect and you know exactly what you have to do. But if they are recommendations, then you may build your dream house, which may not entirely follow. They may or may not follow recommendations. They're only recommendations. But then you go to the review board and they are going to say, but you didn't make a good faith effort and you were required to make a good faith effort and therefore I deny you. And I think if they are requirements, it's much cleaner and clearer to say they are requirements than it is to say they are recommendations, but you absolutely have to follow them for your design to be approved.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Okay, that's it for those that have signed up to speak in person. I believe we have several letters or emails that have been submitted that have been asked to be read. And I will remind again, there's a 3-minute limit that will also apply to those. So hopefully those can all be read within 3 minutes. If not, I'll cut you off.
Yeah, most of them can, with the exception of one.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a total of 5 here. Also, I'm Preston, by the way, new town clerk.
Yeah, we're happy to have Preston too. If you haven't met him yet, I encourage you to say hello to him after the meeting. Preston Janko, Janco. And it's been a great addition to the town. He's got a great attitude and we're happy to have him here. So thank you, Preston.
So the first one we have is Carol Jernigan. She is walking to right now. She says, Mayor Henry, after careful review of your 5-minute video and architectural drawings, it is clearly obvious to me that an outside person/firm wrote proposals. It was definitely not a local or a person that is intimately familiar with the unique charm of Pawleys. Yes, my family loves the history of the island. We spent summers there for well over 60 years, visiting Alice's grave, hearing of the grain man, crabbing at the creek without air conditioning, central heat, or dishwashers. That was part of the charm. As we tell our children and grandchildren about early days spent in the north end, burning our bare feet on the pavement to reach the ocean, then we moved to the south end where we collected discarded glass bottles found on the sand dunes. that we walked up to Kalashnikovs or Franks to cash in for pennies. Our children are in disbelief that there are no TV and no telephones. This is our history of Pawleys. We loved it enough for a brother and sister and a grandchild to get married at chapel. The historic is just that, a district. It is well defined, the homes already there. They have their own history. Yes, they have gnarled trees and Spanish moss that we are not graced with. Their homes were built before ours and are blessed with the roof lines and porches you deem so significant. But that should not be forced on anyone. We do not want a cookie cutter island like subdivisions you often see in cities. Your proposal is fine for that district. We're thankful for generations of families that return to our homes each year as renters, bringing outside revenue to restaurants and stores. Apparently our home suits their needs, or they will not be returning, or they will be returning to the historical district. Our family is spread over several states and we cannot be in attendance at your meeting. However, I am voicing my opinion that while well attended is simply another case of one size does not fit all. Please reconsider your guidelines before mandating them for every home. Respectfully, Carol and Jerry. That's the first one. We have the next one. She's actually a copy of the same location as the trust. Her name is Beth Pawleys. Mayor Henry, I would like to respond to the work that has been done to create an architectural design guidelines for the town of Pawleys Island. It appears to me 90% of the details are geared towards those homeowners in the historical district. While it is a lovely part of the island, I do not have the luxury of a driveway, a landscape yard, and a large wraparound porches. Was any concern taken for the other homeowners? As a South End homeowner, we do not have the land to accommodate such requirements. In the event every build is ever necessary, it would not have to be a shoebox house porches. The land just simply doesn't exist for these guidelines to be followed on the South End. While I have loved coming to Pawleys for decades, part of the charm is the uniqueness of the island homes. The term arrogantly shabby has defined Pawleys for years. These requirements would simply wipe that away. I am not against some guidelines, but those outlined in this document simply do not define the entire island. Please consider all homeowners in South End, North End, and all in between before approving any guidelines for the island. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss this with you or any committee member. I can be reached at, would you like to put your phone number?
No.
Okay. Should the opportunity to discuss be considered by you or the committee. Please consider the entire town as we all contribute to Pawleys Island for our taxes, pride in home ownership, and commitment to the future. Respectfully, Beth Pawleys.
Let me ask you a question.
No, we can't, this is the public hearing yet.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of exchange. If you want to sign up to speak, you certainly can.
We have Gene Buchanan. Mayor Henry, after watching your video for your proposed EDG for the town of Pawleys Island, it appears you are trying to change the entire look of what many of us have learned to love about Pawleys Island. I've been coming to Pawleys Island for 65 years, and the uniqueness of the island is what makes Pawleys different. As a homeowner on the south end, if rebuilding was ever necessary, the lot will not accommodate the proposed house. You will be taking all the charm out of what we have built and grown to love. I strongly suggest you take into consideration all property owners and not just the historical district. I am strongly against this. Sincerely, Gene, Mark, and Chris.
Before you start that one, let me start the clock, okay?
Okay.
Because obviously that's a pretty lengthy statement there. What we're going to do is allow 3 minutes of that to be read, just like everyone else had 3 minutes, and then we'll take whatever you can't get to and we'll put it in the record with the minutes for this meeting. So anyone can access it there.
There was a 4 short one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought that was the,
That one came in all sorts of the end.
okay, good deal.
So it says, dear Mr. Fabry, we are opposed to the creation of an ARB for the following reasons. We believe it will have a punitive effect on smaller lots. Once the threshold of 2,000 square feet is exceeded, the ARB will subject the homeowner to the 80% restriction on the size of the upper floor with no guarantee of dispensation without appeals to the same board or litigation. It would also be next to impossible to meet the minimum architectural design element of not having a slab-sided exterior walls on any side. This would require a porch or similar design element between adjacent houses, which would further restrict or cut into in our case. A 20-foot wide building envelope. Thank you for your consideration. Howard and the bond.
Okay.
This one here, this is the.
Okay, I'll start the timer.
So you got various statements, comments, proposed ordinance of the ARB and BAR. Ladies and gentlemen and citizens, Ryan Fabry kindly offered to read these comments in the meeting entirely and include them in the record of the 6/14/21 meeting. I have sent them ahead by email as well to each of the 5 council members. I oppose the proposed ordinance 2021-06 regarding the ARB on your agenda today, which according to the May minutes of council have been altered since first reading. I oppose the also proposed ordinance 2021-05 regarding the 80% rule, which according to the May minutes of council has been altered since first reading. I oppose the creation of Pawleys Island Architectural Review Board, and I oppose the creation of a set of Pawleys Island architectural guidelines, which are not found in proposed ordinance 2021-06. They are in a manual. Off to the side, and the manual is not specified to be part of any ordinance which can only be changed by ordinance. I oppose all of these things categorically. The package of measures above is being too hastily prepared and presented for adoption. Its whole stated premise is without actual basis, and its content reveals that the real purpose is actually other than historical preservation of state. The whole concept of aesthetic lighting is generally illegal and unless the drafting, mechanics, and other execution of the ordinance is respected. And the actual content and procedure describing what is proposed for passage is not what they are represented to be in the previous minutes and in the sales pitch. The whole package should be voted down as otherwise. But if there is any hesitation, there should be more hesitation, and many questions should be asked to be reliably answered before it goes any further. So let's on a few points for illustration. Number one, is this required public hearing? The agenda includes 10 minutes for public hearing at 5 o'clock, and after the meeting is called to order at 5:10, there's an agenda item of unstated length for public comment. I hope there is much discussion. Proposed 2021-06 nowhere states that existing houses are grandfathered. As represented in the promotions, much less does it state how that would be handled if they were. There is mere mention that the procedure applies to new development, which can mean anything at a later time. This leads to weeding through definitions and other statutes which refer to new construction and refer to construction as any change to improve or unimprove real estate. If a house suffers a calamity and the owner seeks to rebuild it, but is not allowed to rebuild it exactly the same way, or does not want to rebuild it exactly the same way, what then? The answer needs to be stated in the actual law, not be speculated upon verbally from a front porch or meeting. Number three, proposed 2021-06, nowhere states that an owner cannot build without approval of the ARB. I cannot tell whether this is simply a glaring defect in drafting or a stealth measure to make the ordinance look friendlier to the owner. The proposed ordinance states that the application must be made. The proposed ordinance states that the ARB can grant or deny the application, but the proposed ordinance does not appear to state anywhere the consequences of approval or denial. Is this the basis of Mr. Henry's statement in the video that all that is being required?
It's time. Time's up. He's up for 3 minutes. Again, we'll put that in the record with the minutes. And just as a point of clarification, this is not an exchange, the public hearing, the public comments. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, and it seemed rude, but that's just the way we do it. If you do want to make some comments, you can come sign up. Yeah, please. You can certainly do that.
It's not a comment, it's a question.
Okay. That way we can address it when we actually bring up the ordinance for consideration. And I hate to do like that. That's the way you do it. So go ahead. What's your name?
I want to know if the town of Pawleys Island just include this island? Or when you say the town of Pawleys Island, you're talking about homes on the other side of the creek?
No, sir. The town of Pawleys Island is literally from the north end of the island to the south end. When you leave the causeways, you've left the town of Pawleys Island.
Let's ask.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Glad to clarify that. All right. So that is all of the public comments for the first two items on the public hearing. We have a third item, ordinance 2021-07, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the town of Pawleys Island to change the zoning designation for Georgetown County tax map number 42-0174-022-0000, located at 636 Pritchard Street, from conservation and preservation to residential R1. This is a separate matter. This is an item that we took up last month as a first reading. And I don't see that anyone has signed up to speak on that. So at this time, what I'd like to do is close the public hearing, and we'll move into our regular meeting agenda. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. We've had public comments. Move to item 3, which is approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, one from our May 17th meeting, the regular meeting. The second being the minutes from June 3rd, which is when the town council and planning commission both had quorums attend for a workshop. There are minutes in your packet for those as well. So I'll either take a motion to amend those or approve those.
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Thanks for that. Item 4, reports and updates. Ryan, you are first up.
Well, I was gonna use this time to introduce Preston as the new town clerk. And think about it. That you could read these before I got a chance to do so. So Preston is the new town clerk. He's been a great addition and we're happy to have him. So hope everyone gets a chance to stop by and say hello and get to meet him in the future. The other thing I just want to mention was that the t-shirts for the 4th of July will be in tomorrow. So hopefully we will start selling those tomorrow. We're up against it. Usually we get to it a little bit earlier than we are now, but I have no doubt that we'll sell all those shirts in the 2.5 weeks we have. So
What are they selling for, Ryan?
same as last year, which was $20 shirt. Well, we're gonna sell them out of the old town hall, like we did last year. And then after we're done on July 5th, they're gonna turn it into that art gallery again for the month of July and August. So they'll be sold out of the old town hall.
And very happy to be having a parade this year.
Yeah. Any announcements on timing of that or anything? Ryan, parade.
With the parade, so the parade will be like we've always done unless it falls on Saturday. So it'll start at 10 o'clock. So everyone who has a parade float will line up on the South Causeway at 9:30.
It's Sunday.
Sunday.
It is Sunday.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a 10 o'clock, goes at 10 o'clock. Unless it's a Saturday, then we push it back an hour for the rental companies. And I talked to the chapel folks because there was some concern about having a 10 o'clock and it interfering with service. But they just decided to move it up an hour. And we're gonna work to make sure that their parking is used for just chapel parking that morning. So, yeah, 10 o'clock and line up at 9:30. Usually takes about an hour and 15 minutes to get all the way up to this side of the island and give out the awards. And we just nice to have a parade again.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
That's it for your administrative report?
Yeah.
We need judges, don't we?
And I brought that up to the events committee today. The women who've done it in the past, they actually mentioned to us about 2 years ago that they didn't really want to do it any longer. And we talked them into doing one last year, so they did it. Last year we didn't have a parade, so it wasn't an issue. And then they contacted us this year saying that they don't want to do it. And so I've notified the events committee and hopefully we'll be able to find a group of folks that want to volunteer and be a judge for the parade.
For floats, docks, and homes,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
3 different categories.
Yep.
Cool. Any questions for Ryan on his update? All right, next up, item 4B, which is the police report. Chief Fanning, how you doing, man?
We're doing well, thank you. We've had a fairly calm and steady summer so far. Just looking at the report, if you look at the traffic survey, I have April rather than May, that's change the month. But the numbers are updated. Last year, this year in May, we had a decrease of 6.8% in traffic going on. Year to date, though, we are up 6.7%. There were a handful of traffic enforcement summonses written, 54 parking summonses issued. As far as the actual incidents go, they were fairly routine, except for one the burglary at 324 Marble Avenue. The rental company went in to do an inspection and they found the door unlocked. There didn't seem there was no forced entry. Nothing was really taken. Things were moved around. It looked like people had been staying there. They left some items on the counters and left the TV on. And we call it a Goldilocks burglary where somebody's been sleeping in my bed, type of thing. We collected some items for DNA, not DNA, but rather for fingerprints. John dusted them for fingerprints. We had somebody else take a look at them, and we didn't get anything back, unfortunately. But, we kind of asked around in the area, and nobody said they had seen or heard anything, so we don't know exactly how long they had been there for or how long it was until the rental company discovered it, so we don't have much to go on. Other than that, fairly routine. Does anybody see anything you have a question about? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. Appreciate what y'all do every day on the island. All right, item 4C is a building report. Copy of that is in your packets. Anything fresh or new on that?
There's 4 items, one of which is a new construction, so that's at 611 Springs. Otherwise.
Okay. Any questions on the building report? No. All right. The last item under reports and updates is the financial report. Copy of that is also in the packet.
So the financial report is in your packets. I threw a kind of summary page on the first page this month, just to kind of highlight the main points. General balance of 843. Beach fund is 355,509. And then just kind of hit the major revenue sources. Where we're at there, those look low, but that's only because the majority of our money comes in over the next 3 months through the tax and the municipal association programs that we get revenue from. The biggest check usually comes in July. So, and then expenses by department are listed at the bottom. Anyone has any questions? Answer them.
Is all the underground wire money coming in correct? I mean, as it should?
It'll be higher this year. So that's the other thing. So I'm working on finalizing the audit from 2020. So in July, Stacy will be here to do the audit report. But you'll see on that we didn't bill the underground wire invoices until very late in the year. This is the first week in December. So maybe 40% of the payments that we traditionally would expect to get in that year, we didn't get them. They'll actually be paid in the first half of this year. So what will happen this year is we'll end up with a lot more underground wire revenue, although at the end of the day, it's the same. It's just where it happened to fall on before or after January 1. So, yeah, so everything you see on underground wire revenue is actually on there right now. That's actually from 2020. We won't bill 2021 until September, and then it'll double up.
Just part of your question, is everyone paying? I mean, it's like,
Was that what I thought it was?
I just want, because I'm kind of wondering as you're talking.
So there are, yeah,
Right.
I mean, everyone's paid. There's about 10 properties that have not paid, and they've not paid since the inception of this whole project. Some have been very clear about not paying, so that is what it is. And some have just avoided it like it's not happening. So send an invoice, but 10 out of 415, if you would have told me before this all started that we were going to do a project with 415 property owners and it was going to be a voluntary payment system and not a tax, and that only 10 out of 114 would decide that they weren't going to pay, I'd call that successful. So we're nearing the end, and the challenge now is with so many homes selling, I have to stay on top of it to make sure that the realtors are transparent with the owner-buyer situation and make sure whoever's buying it understands that there's this outstanding balance, and that apply the best to take care of that at closing. But there are a few situations where the new owners are doing the last 2 or 3 payments, whatever it might be. So we're on top of that.
So Ryan, when I look at the year-to-dates, both in terms of revenue and expenses, are any of them out of sorts in terms of high or low based upon your monthly projections?
No, I mean, if anything, I'd say revenue is much higher. So we're way ahead of local aid tax already. It's same with state aid tax. State aid tax, for whatever reason, was kind of short last year. The first payment this year was like almost double what we typically would get as the first payment. So I would say if anything, revenue is much higher.
And expenses in line.
but if not less.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the financial report? All right, let's move on to item 5A, which is the final reading of ordinance 2021-05, an ordinance amending the town's unified development code to restrict the second story heated living space of residential development to 80% or less of the first story heated living space. As you guys know, this is at the core of the ARB. As was mentioned earlier, there were 6 items that the planning commission had basically given to us as what they believe should be requirements. We've whittled that down considerably to this one, 80%. Item B, which we'll talk about next, is the actual creation of an ARB board, which will operate using the existing development code, with this being the only other ordinance where we're changing the UDC, correct? But obviously we will have, and we'll have this later, an item 5D, which is a resolution to create or adopt the architectural design guidelines. And that's where the substance and the detail is on not only the 80% rule, but the additional detail on the suggestions or the recommendations that you mentioned earlier are provided in more detail. I think what I'd like to do in reference to this one is address some of the comments that were made earlier. First, I wanted to say that obviously there were some emails read, most of them were not in favor of, but I can say that I've received numerous emails, and for everyone that I've received that were against it or had questions about it, I've received 3 or 4 more that were overwhelmingly in favor of it. So none of those were read here. Didn't think that was, we didn't want to spend the time to do that here, but I can just tell you that's been the case. So I just wanted to address a few of the comments and share my thoughts on those. And I don't want to take the floor altogether because I want to hear from you guys. I just want to share a few thoughts. One of the comments was obvious to me that an outside person firm wrote the proposal. What I will say is that all of the proposals and the recommendations that we have in front of us were done by the Planning Commission. They were done thoughtfully and professionally by members of the Planning Commission. And the actual design guidelines, the ordinance, all of the things that we have in front of us today were written by a member of the Planning Commission who's also an attorney. And a lot of the additional detail was done by an architect who designed this building. So we've done it right. And it's not, we didn't hire a firm to come in here and tell us how to do this. We did it internally. That's why it took us over a year to do it. And there was a lot of thought put into this. That's one thought I had. Secondly, I think it was mentioned, we don't want a cookie cutter island home. Our home suits our guest needs. Well, you can keep it just like that. And if something happens, if it burns down, God forbid, or a hurricane comes, which we know we have those, and it's destroyed, you can build it right. Exactly back to that. And I also heard something in a comment that said, where does it say you can build it back? Or where does it say grandfather? Well, the existing UDC, the development code, absolutely speaks to that in detail, that if your house is destroyed by a calamity, you can build it back. So wanted to clarify that one.
Even if it doesn't meet the requirements.
Correct.
You can build it back exactly how it
Exactly.
was.
Thanks for clarifying that. Another comment, 90% of the details are geared towards those homeowners in the historical district. Was there any concern taken for other homeowners? I will say the Planning Commission represents all areas of the island. And I think this person's on the south end of Pawleys Island. The chairman that we're proposing tonight has a house on the south end, and he's someone who's been around ARBs and POAs, and he's very well qualified, and I'm sure he will represent the south end very well. And while I'm on the subject of south end, north end, middle of the island, there was a lot of that during my election. And personally, the more we can get away from, well, the middle of the island is this, north end is that, the better off we're going to be. We're one island, and this whole, what we're trying to do here is preserve Pawleys Island. We're not trying to preserve the middle of the island, the north end. We're not trying to penalize anyone with what we're doing. So when I read stuff like the middle of the island or the north end, I wish we would get more along the vein of we're one island. Let's see. Arrogantly shabby has defined Pawleys for years, and these requirements would completely wipe that away. That's why we're doing this. We're doing this to protect arrogantly shabby. You go up and down the island, you're going to see houses that don't fit the quote Pawleys look. We're not trying to change that. We're trying to hold the line on what we have. I think Bill mentioned about, 15 years ago when they first looked at this. We don't want to arbitrarily restrict people from building what they want. We want to protect what we have. And I think if we don't get a grip on it, it's going to start to look more and more like our neighbors to the north. God bless them. They got great. I was up there all weekend, and Myrtle Beach and Garden City and Surfside, they got it going on. I mean, they're doing just fine. But Pawleys has it going on because of what we have and who we are and the uniqueness that we have. I don't want to keep going on here, but I just want to make a few more comments about it. I want you guys to weigh in, certainly. Trying to change the entire looks of what many have grown to love about Pawleys Island. A couple of comments on that. We're not trying to change Pawleys Island. We're trying to preserve what we have. We're not trying to change by doing this. I want to mention the grandfathering again. It allows things to stay as they are. If you have a hurricane, you want to build it back. Build it back. Build it back just like you have it. I want to be able to do the same thing with CVUN. CVUN got destroyed by a hurricane. I'd want to build it back. And that's what happened in 1955. CVUN was destroyed by Hurricane Hazel, and it was built back exactly like it was, which I love. And then lastly, this ARB is about the future. It's about the future, protecting us from change. We're not trying to change anything. We're trying to protect what we have. So I just wanted to make those comments because I know, and I appreciate, and I encouraged in my short video for people to speak out. Let's hear from you and make sure we address those things, and hopefully address some of your comments as well. I'll open it up to the rest of y'all comments.
I have a call from a property owner that's owns property not too far from my home, and I live at 137 Atlantic Avenue. And his concern was that, especially I'm going back to the big box idea and how we have come up with the possibility of eliminating or just allowing only 80% of the second floor as opposed to the square footage of the first floor. And his comment to me was, well, there's a lot of people on council or connected with council or whatever that has a big box type house. And now they're trying to legislate that now new construction cannot be that way. And my comment was, I don't know if two wrongs make a right. I don't think they do. And so I feel like it is our responsibility to look into that possibility of trying to control that. And I think this ordinance that we've been discussing gives us a little bit more ammunition, I guess, to be able to do that. That's it.
I had some comments particularly focused on small lots, which are unique in terms of the problem that they create. And I think it's fair to say that the group that worked really hard to put these ideas together spent a lot of time thinking about that and talking about it and exploring that and looking at lots on the island that are rather small, how they would be dealt with. And at the end of the day, one of the things that was done was, because of the 80%, the application of the 80% rule could result in a smaller home on a very, very small lot. They applied the existing rule in the UTC, which basically says no rule can make you build a smaller house than 2,000 square feet. So you can at least build a 2,000 square foot house, regardless of what the other regulations might have forced you to do. So I think that was a recognition by the group that that's an important thing to consider. And so small lots were not ignored by any stretch. And I know a lot of the lots up on the south end perhaps would fall in that category, or some anyway. So I think, just for FYI, that does exist.
Yeah, to clarify that some more too, is the rubber met the road when we actually started going to each property and looking at it and seeing, okay, how do these apply? And we looked at the ARB and these new guidelines or recommendations. Is that going to penalize or create a situation where they have to build a smaller house? And in each case we looked at, the existing development code said, well, you have to allow them to build to this square footage period. You can't step over that. And we have not stepped over that. That's still going to take precedence over what we're recommending in these design guidelines.
To get to that 2,000 square feet, you still have to have 80%.
Really can't.
I can answer that. You don't.
Go ahead.
If you could get 2,000 feet now, you can get 2,000 feet then.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
I think the only way you can get the 2,000 feet on that narrow lot is to be straight up. You could do that.
Correct.
and what's unique about, there's a lot of different architectural styles here. There's probably one that's predominant, like on the south end, middle island, and on the north end. They're all like on the north end, it's probably more like what I call a creek house, like yours, Ashley. And you got the old historic houses right here, and then, the tilt up or pound houses more on the south end. But I think that they have, this committee's kind of really tried to look at all those and come up with some, they might be soft guidelines, but that's what they are, is guidelines instead of hard, rigid, you can only do it this way or that way. The big one for me is you can build back what you got. And it's a hardship if you got a lot that you can't build 2,000 square feet on, unless with the 80-20 rule. It really is. But now taking care of that, it's not a hardship. So.
Yeah, I'll just, because you mentioned something about they're not requirements, they're recommendations now. And I think the key thing that we're trying to do is be as flexible as possible. We don't want an ARB that's going to be hard and fast about everything. We obviously we're looking for, we don't want a big box. Let's get right down to it. So if you can be flexible and you can design a nice looking house and satisfy that, and I think I wrote down the words you used, because in that video, those were my words. I wasn't being legalistic. I'm just communicating what we're trying to do. That's just the way I do things. But I think I forget what were the words that if you will be required to make a good faith effort. And you could say, well, you used the word required. What we're basically saying is work with us. The builder has an architect, the town has an architect. Let's come together, have a professional review and design. Let's work through it, and let's let the ARB look at it. And if you're satisfying the 80%, which is going in the ordinances, and you've got a root pitch that that works, and you're not stacking. If you basically say, I'll do the 80%, but I'm not doing any of the other stuff, it's not what we want, because that's not what we're trying to do. Otherwise, we're wasting our time up here. So we're just basically saying, look, make a good faith effort to, yeah, exactly. I mean, we're here, and Ryan's here, the town's architect, whoever that ends up being long-term, that person's being compensated to work with the architect. And that's a good thing. I mean, there's been some houses built lately, and I'm not dogging them, but they probably would have appreciated somebody at the town that would help them kind of, they may not be from here. They may not know much about Pawleys Island. So
there's a sunset clause too, and that's a big deal. So if it doesn't work out in 2 years, it's got to be renewed. And if it's not working, we can kill it.
Built in an automatic review point.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that, I sat in on a few of the meetings and listened to the work that these guys did, men and women did. And I think they spent an inordinate amount of time trying to not be draconian. They spent an inordinate amount of time figuring out, how do we get to the goal of not having the big box without being overly aggressive, without holding people to unnecessary regulations and forcing them to do things that really go against
it wasn't easy.
Their best interest.
It wasn't easy. There's a lot of reasons why we may not have done it or tried to do it, because there's a lot of roadblocks to it. But I think we've got a point where now where it's flexible.
Yeah, I think it is too.
What else? Call vote. Need a motion, unless there's more discussion, which I'm happy to have.
Sir, where are you? Where are you on it? You okay?
I think that some of the initial guidelines have been trimmed back so that it's not so cumbersome. Part of me is concerned that we're going to be a cookie cutter look, but I think with the different size properties, that it won't be cookie cutter. We're not specifying colors and what you can plant in your yard and things like that. We're just talking basic guidelines, which, as Bill said, we did 15 years ago, and largely that went ignored. And so now we'll give it a little bit more teeth. And as Gary said, if it doesn't work in 2 years, we'll get rid of it.
Yep.
And the idea that, you know, some of us have boxes, not exactly a box, but I know what Rocky's talking about. There are some people who would say that, oh, you got yours in and now you're gonna make it tough for the rest of us. You know, I have a small lot and I built what I could build. And I remember telling the draftsman, not the architect, this is the first house I ever built, that I didn't want it to look like the broadside of a barn, like a house in front of me. And that's why I have large windows. So, I mean, each his own, and I don't think this is overly restrictive. I really don't. And, you know, part of it's going to be a work in progress.
For sure. For sure. Which is why we left it as flexible as we could.
Well, I think we left a lot of it open to discussion and people that will review it openly. Can't beat that.
Yep, agreed.
Ashley?
No, I agree 100%, but I was trying to say that certainly said in my comments earlier. Yeah. I think it's, I like the idea that after 2 years, if we're not satisfied with what we've done, we can throw it out and start over.
Yeah. Or improve it, or improve it,
Or improve it.
or improve it.
Right.
And nothing says we can't do that before then. Let's just make sure that we do it.
Right.
But there are people looking at properties to tear down and rebuild
Yeah.
in numerous locations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that'll be ongoing.
It will be. I mean, and I don't think we necessarily want those great big boxes.
Nope. Do not.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance 2021-08.
05?
Oh, sorry.
05.
Taking my glasses off. I would have seen it better.
Can we clarify that? Minutes with the replacement.
Yeah. There is no 08.
A second.
All right, a motion, a second on the final reading of ordinance 2021-05. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Item 5B, final reading of ordinance 2021, an ordinance to establish an architectural review board for the town of Pawleys Island. There is a document in your packet that outlines all of the details of the ARB. Back in May. That architectural design guidelines is actually going to be resolution 5D, which is when we vote to adopt those guidelines. There is an ordinance in there that
I see. Guidelines.
Yeah, there is a guideline.
It is in the middle of the package.
So the architectural review board as being proposed, as currently being proposed, it would be 5 members. Which we would have to appoint later in the agenda, which is item 5E. That would operate alongside the town's architect to review each application and make a up or down vote on whether to approve. The last meeting that we had about 10 days ago, we had a quorum of town council and planning commission there. I think one of the main items of discussion was when it comes before ARB, and the architect doesn't vote, it's the ARB that votes, the 5 members on up and down, up or down. And if for some reason they denied that application, or it looked like it was going that way, the homeowner and their architect could come in and have a forum where they discussed it and tried to work out some details. And there was some discussion about whether that should be a closed hearing or a closed meeting or open meeting. And I think we discussed that at that time to make it closed so you don't have neighbors ganging up on you. But the better way to go about that is to always have these things open. We don't have any claims that we're having secret meetings or being behind closed doors. So that's the way we decided or talked about being open meeting. That was one of the main things I recall discussing 10 days ago. And I'll just go ahead and I'll mention, because we'll have to vote on whether to appoint these members or not, but the 5 members that have been identified and agreed to serve on the ARB, one is Ken Leach. He's agreed to be the chair. He's been many years as a builder of stadiums, and he's done a lot of work. Has a house on the south end. He's presided over POAs and other ARBs. He's got a lot of experience doing this stuff, and feel like he's solid. John Felton has an insurance company. He's a business owner. Frank Robinson's an attorney from Columbia, South Carolina. John Lemaster sitting right back there. John served on the planning commission. Most recently, he's done a heck of a job drafting a lot of the documents that we have in front of us here. John's also an attorney. And the good news with John is that not only will he be serving on the ARB, but he will be an ex officio member of the planning commission. So he can, what's that? Vice versa. What did I say? Yeah, you're still to the ARB. Gotcha. You'll still be on the planning commission, but you'll serve as ex officio. Sorry, I had that backwards. On the ARB, which is basically a liaison between the two. This is the planning commission's really drafted and done all this heavy lifting. It'll be important to have that. And then finally, Linda Keller, which is Buddy Keller's wife, and she's will be solid as well. So those are the 5 members. They're longtime Pawleys people. I couldn't tell you that. I mean, most of them I can, but.
Ken Leach is on the south end, Frank
John's on the
Robinson.
north end. Frank, you know where Frank's house is?
South end.
South end. And Linda Keller's north.
Nope.
Linda Keller, they have 2. They have 2. She has north and middle. And then John Masters near the Pelican Inn.
Middle.
We've got good representation.
Fairly spread out.
Yeah, fairly spread out.
All right, so any questions on the ARB document?
I think one of the things that was talked about during our last workshop also, Brian, was the appeals procedure, and I heard some comments that, we are building the appeals in as if we anticipate a lot of that and, be very legalistic and whatnot. And I think that's really far from the case. And all that I've heard from John and the planning commission and that pulled all this together. They want to work hard to get those, any disagreements or any conflicts worked out at the local level. Work them out with the ARB and the homeowners in multiple working sessions. I think everybody bends over backwards to do that, as opposed to just saying, well, we disapprove and you take it to court. You know, that's not the intent by any stretch. And I've heard a lot of comments about that. I think that's the way the whole ARB feels. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that we're just building in this appeals process because it's like, okay, no, and, you know.
And we also felt like if we're addressing each one of these applications in that manner and we're doing everything we can, then over backwards and work with them. And then you have an ARB that's longtime Pawleys people, an architect, they're all like, this just doesn't work. Chances are something's wrong with it. Something's wrong with it. So,
Yeah. But it's not, I guess my point is the legal course is not the default.
correct. Good point. Good point.
I make a motion that we accept the final reading of ordinance 2021-06, the establishment of an ARB board for the town of Pawleys.
Second.
A motion and a second on the final reading of ordinance 2021-06. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. All right, item 5C is a final reading of ordinance 2021-07, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the town of Pawleys Island to change the zoning designation for Georgetown County tax map number located at 636 Fifth Street from CPR1. Ryan, has there been any more conversation or scuttlebutt since our last meeting on this one?
No, it's the same as it was last month. So.
And I think we all felt like that was a kind of a more of a housekeeping item than anything. The last meeting.
Yeah, it's just at some point, I don't know why that lot was zone CB, but it was, and single family house exists there and does not, the OCR critical line does not pose a conflict. There's no reason that if the house was ripped down, it couldn't be rebuilt. So the only thing standing in its way at this point would be the fact that it's zone CP and not R1. Yeah. And like I've said in the past, I don't think any property owner would want to restrict another property owner from being able to rebuild their house if it was ripped down due to a calamity. So all this does is remove that one restriction.
Okey-dokey.
Did it alter the property taxes?
No, because it's a single family house that exists on it. The value of the property is what it is. I mean, I don't think anyone picked up on the fact that it was zone CP until the neighbor next door bought the house a few years ago and went to go do some renovations, realized that half their lot was zone CP. And we rezoned that based on the same due diligence and making sure that there was no reason why. There's no reason it was zoned that other than sort of error. And I went back to the post with the regional council of governments that helped us with that zoning map, and they could not figure out for life on why that took place. So fact of the matter is there's a single family house that exists on that lot currently. And all this would do is rezone it so that its zoning is reflective of its actual uses right now.
Will we have the same situation with the lots across the street from it?
No, that's much different, because all those lots fall within
Wetlands?
state's critical area, so they would not be.
And R1 is residential 1 acre?
Well, I mean, it says that on there, but there's only one acre lot on this entire island. So,
Right, well, I didn't know if it would be like R10 or something.
no, R1 is, the one is low density, the residential low density residential.
Okay.
Single family houses. R2 is medium density. My place that exists here is the campus. So it's under good acre.
I made the motion that we approve.
I'll second. You beat me to it.
Any further, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Is that one of those houses they're going to tear down? They're going to tear it down?
No, Willing to keep it.
Okay,
All right, item 5D, resolution 2021-01, a resolution of the town council of the town of Pawleys Island to adopt the architectural design guidelines. Copy that is in your packet. I think those have been modified since the last meeting that we had by providing more sketches and detail on homes that have 80% on the second floor and how to maximize square footage. Everything else is pretty much the same, right?
Council adopting the design guidelines that is set in the ordinance as the guiding document.
Yes,
Because those are all very subjective things.
yes.
And this is a document that is going to evolve over time. And this is the first version, and maybe a year or 2 or 5 years. Things that come up that council and planning commission, architectural review board didn't see coming, and
Good
it
point.
needs to be revised. So this one will be in place until council decides to
Updated.
update it. And within the resolution, this is where I put the 2-year
Sunset clause.
sunset. So it says in the resolution, that in the 2-year period, you will revisit as a council to make sure it's fulfilling all the goals that you intended.
Good deal.
Make a motion that we approve the architectural design guidelines.
Further discussion.
I got a question. What is, all this takes effect July 1st? I see it right here.
Say that again, Gary?
It all becomes effective July 1st. That's what I.
Correct. Correct.
What is it? I have a question related to that as well. What is the, how do you determine whether someone is under the wire, if you will, in terms of their planning process and either designing, building or clearing or whatever? How do we decide who meets that criteria?
So it'll come down to when they submit their permit application. So we have all of these written, so the effective date is July 1st. So if someone were to submit a building permit application on the last day of June, then everything would fall under the way it is now. July 1st would be the day everything changes up.
Okay, thank you.
Works for me. We have a motion and a second on resolution 2021-01. Any additional discussion?
should we be doing pending? I mean, like making it effective immediately? I mean,
You have to do pending ordinance document. That would be between the first and second reading. This could have been effective today, but I was under the impression that it was going to be changed to July 1st. So everything was changed to have an effective date of July 1st.
do you anticipate a rush of
No,
applications?
I only know of one. Everyone who has spent money or worked to design a house that I'm aware of knows that this is going on. And that's when we talk to each and every single one of them going back 3 months, say, listen, this is what's coming. Whether you like it or not, it's going to have an impact on what you want to do. If you want to do what you've been working on, you've got until, at that time, the date was June 14th, to submit your building application. If you're okay with these new design guidelines and they don't cause a problem for you, well, then there's no rush to do it. But the only way that you can absolutely 100% guarantee that you can keep with the design that you've been working on, so you have to do it before this is in the second reading. There's only one property that I'm aware of that's still considering it, and they know that they would have to do it by a certain date, so it's up to them whether or not they want to.
Okay, just ask.
We still have a motion and a second on resolution 2021-01. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right, we have item 5E, appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. And I left off one, which is Green Deschamps. So it's Green Deschamps, Ken Leach, John Felton, Frank Robinson, and Linda Keller.
I make a motion, we accept those members to be appointed to the board.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion on the motion?
So one small detail.
Yes.
The way the ordinance is written, they were set up to be staggered terms, 5, so 3 that would expire in odd years,
Okay,
2 to expire in even years. So if you point all 5, 3 of them have to be odd, 3 one-year terms, because those one expire the next year and odd year.
So the motion should be separate of the 3
So
people,
you have
the
3
2
one-year
people.
terms, 2
Change your
two-year terms,
motion.
and then when that 1-year term is up next year, then you just reappoint those 3 to 2-year terms, and now you're on a
Okay.
staggered.
okay.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter, really.
Now, I'll amend the motion to stagger the terms to 1 and 2-year terms.
And I
You
think,
just have to name 3 people
Good
in
point.
1-year terms.
yeah,
2
we
of
need
them.
to specify those now, don't we?
I think so, do.
It's fine with me either way.
I would specify now.
I would kind of, because we can.
Or let the committee decide.
But you guys are the ones that are
Right,
Yeah.
appointing
writing
to
it.
these two.
Correct. I mean, I would
It's your motion. Pick them.
pick two
Pick 'em.
members to be 2 years. I would recommend Ken Leach and maybe pick one from there.
Well, I recommend that we go with Ken Leach and
Frank,
Keller, Ms. Keller,
Linda,
to have 1-year terms and the other
For 2
3.
2-year terms.
2-year terms, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to appoint those 5 members, as I stated, with Ken Leach and Linda Keller, both having 2-year terms, and then Green Deschamps, John Felton, and Frank Robinson would have 1-year term.
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right, last item on the agenda is coastal science and engineering.
So I reached out to Coastal Science when they were out a week and a half ago. We talked about it, and I said we were interested in getting a proposal for them to research and investigate the North End Jetty and basically see what it would need in terms of repair, what would be allowed under certain permits, and then make a recommendation after that as to, what specifically would need to be done. So this is really just going in there and investigating everything. So there's a proposal in your packets for not to exceed proposal amount for coastal science.
Okay.
Don't have to make you don't have to act on it now.
Right.
But that is what it would take a look at it.
Okay. So just have a read over that document between now and the next meeting. We can decide whether we want to pursue that or.
so does this assume that Pawleys Island is taking ownership of the jetty?
I mean, that doesn't say at all that we're taking ownership or responsibility of it. It's just saying that we are going the next step of actually looking into it and seeing what a repair might look like or what might be needed to bring it up to.
Mhm.
I don't know that they might come back and say that whatever is necessary up there is, far greater than just repairing the rocks and the timbers like a groin repair like we did a couple of years ago. Might be a lot more involved in that, but this is just a start, kind of. You gotta start somewhere.
I think we should look into your question a little more, see any implication, but all we're talking about now is a consultation, right? I
We're
mean,
just investigating it.
yeah,
$13,000 worth.
if we so choose, yeah. Okay, let's move on to item 6, comment, y'all have any comments?
maybe only just to thank the planning commission for all the hard work.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
To this ARB.
Thankless.
Yeah, I want to thank John Hildreth for his leadership, and everybody who participated in that. One last thing I will say, which is a bit of good news, we found out recently that Myrtle Avenue is going to be repaved within the next calendar year. We're excited about that. It'll be a vast improvement.
Does that mean to take away more, same amount of asphalt we'll put back? Did they take away the same amount they put back? I think, is that what they do?
I hope not.
I hope
I
not.
think they scrape it first and then put new stuff back.
I hope they raise it,
Scrape that and put that.
raise it to the level of the
I guess that's
manhole
up to
covers.
DOT.
It'd be worth looking into.
Is it the entire permit or just for?
I believe it's going to go from here to the bird's
The
nest.
bird nest.
Big time.
For sure.
See,
All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
good night. See ya.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Do it is to sell the asphalt.
You might be right.